Welcome to Real Kitchen Sessions, where we discuss the real happenings of a commercial kitchen. And it's going to be a little bit of adult activities while we discuss these things. Can't really discuss what they're going to be, but if you listen closely, you might understand. And I guess let's just get into it. Let's start off from the beginning. A little bit about me. What got me into cooking was waking up every morning as a kid and smelling fresh, let's just say fresh beans in the morning. Like before the sun is coming up, I'm waking up to fresh beans, hearing the tortilla roller getting smashed down. Basically, just waking up to home cooking every day. And it was before school. I would go down and I watched my grandmother just start cooking. She's cooking up a storm. She'd sit me down on the counter and I'd watch her. And sometimes she would say, "Hey, here, go ahead and roll this tortilla out." And of course, I would pretend like I know what the hell I'm doing, but of course, I wouldn't be able to. So that's what first got me interested in cooking because I would see her make all of these tacos at mock speed and then we'd sell them later on during the day. That's another story. But other than that, there was a restaurant that was well known here in Austin. It's called Porfirio's Tacos. It was last owned by one of my cousins, and growing up as a kid, I would go in there with my grandfather, and he would cook, and I pretend to learn to cook, and I was pretending I was a chef back then, just stirring the beans, stirring the pot, and I was in heaven. I thought I was the best chef ever, and I was like 8 years old. And of course, there's real chefs running around cooking up a storm because it was really busy. They had a bunch of taco trucks and whatnot. So that also gave me some fond memories of cooking as well. Let's see what else. My grandfather was also a chef. He used to own a little taco place. It was before my time, but it was called Taquito Chef. And so learning to cook with him versus learning to cook with my grandmother was very different. With him, he would send my grandmother with all the ladies in the family. They'll go get their nails done or, go shopping or whatever ladies used to do back then. I'm not sure. But the guys, we would stay home and we would start cooking seafood. So we'd start cooking early in the morning. We'd start the gumbo, and that took the longest. So that was the first thing that we started, is get the fresh roux started and get it nice and dark, full of flavor. And then, we'd make our seafood gumbo with shrimp. And my grandmother, she loved fried shrimp. So we used to make fresh fried shrimp all the time. We'd peel it, and sometimes, depending on what we have at home, we would use like cornflakes or breadcrumbs, basically whatever. One time we actually used frosted flakes. And if you've ever tried coconut shrimp, if you try frosted flakes to make some fried shrimp, it tastes pretty similar. It's very sweet. And I remember specifically this one time, everybody loved it. They were thinking we made coconut shrimp when it wasn't. And we just took the credit. We're like, yeah, we planned to do it, but it's because nobody wanted to go to the store because the guys, they were already drinking, and my grandfather was busy cooking. And of course, I was too young to drive, so nobody was able to go and get anything for breading. So where are we at? We're at 4:20 now. I guess we're gonna go ahead and get into the festivities. Give me 1 second. Okay. So, if you are of age and you're a consenting adult, go ahead and get out your drink or get out your cigarettes or whatever it is that you guys smoke and go ahead and indulge, sit back and relax, and we can have a little chat. So today is, let's see, what is today? Today is a Monday, January 23rd of 2023. So today I decided we're going to go ahead and start this podcast. We're going to do it right. We're going to go ahead and talk about things and discuss things that I haven't seen anybody really discuss or talk about. And it has to do with the food industry. I'm thinking for some of the podcasts, some of the ideas I'm coming up with, I'm thinking of including some funny stories, thinking of including culinary school, whether it's worth going or not. Basically, all types of fuckery that you would hear in the kitchen or experience as a professional chef. Currently, I'm an executive chef at one of the most prominent schools on the continent. And that's all I'm going to say about that right now. I actually called in today to do this podcast and to go ahead and start filming some classes that I'm going to be doing. You might hear about them later. But it's classes that you can purchase on the internet as well as save them for later usage if you don't know how to cook, if you're interested in learning. I'm going to be doing mostly for family meals. I'm thinking about maybe for professional chefs as well, but I think that might be better in person, just because of the laboratories type stuff that you would have to do with that and make sure that the proper balancing is there for the taste. Well, let's see here. Yeah, I think that's a good start for now. I'm going to put this on pause. I'm going to finish up and then we'll be back. And we're back. Okay, so where were we? We discussed a little bit about my grandfather cooking. He used to cook a lot of seafood. Now, when I say he used to cook a lot of seafood, the first thing that comes to mind is his gumbo. Everybody knew and loved his shrimp gumbo. Now, if you've never had gumbo, it's like a soup. It's made with this great broth. So it takes a long time because if you imagine, if it's just velvety goodness. It's rich, dark, velvety, salty, bitter, sweet, tangy, liquid goodness. That's what made up the broth. And to that, we added fresh okra. If you wanted some type of vegetable, throw that in there. We added fresh shrimp. And sometimes we would put fish in it, but mostly it was shrimp. That was his seafood gumbo, was the shrimp. I've seen them put in, I want to say like octopus, shrimp, fish, things like that. But the thing that brings me back to a kid is having a fresh seafood gumbo, specifically shrimp. And we'd serve that with fresh squeezed lime and or lemon and a bottled hot sauce that everybody knows, but I'm not going to mention it by name because I'm not sure how all that works. I'm just one of the guys. All right. And so with that hot sauce, we serve that with fresh iced tea with mounds of ice. And sometimes I'd put fresh squeezed lemon in it, but I typically liked it without any lemon. Some days you just want lemon for some reason. I just got a hair in my ass and all right, let me add some lemon to that. So that was that was my childhood growing up around gumbo. And we do this not that often, but often enough to make it special. And we make a whole day of it. The guys would be there, would be cooking, would be talking, talking like guys, just doing guy things, drinking beer, cooking food, talking stories, giving consejos, things like that. Consejos is kind of like if I'm going to teach you something, I'm going to teach you from a story. I'm going to tell you my miscomings, and hopefully that will help yours, help you along your story. And so we do that a lot, we do that often enough to make it seem very important, but make it fun and memorable. And so when I think of seafood, I think of gumbo, and I think of those times that we cooked gumbo together before he passed. As for my grandmother, everybody loved everything she cooked pretty much. Um, but on Sundays was reserved specifically for chicken mole. Now, have you ever had her chicken mole? If you've ever had it, then like everybody would go over on Sundays and everybody would slam on. She'll make this huge, big old, huge steaming pot full of chicken mole. And I mean, there must have been 40 pounds worth of chicken in this thing. Most of the time, it was probably like 10 pounds. But sometimes, 40 pounds, maybe more. And so on top of that, she cooked fresh rice, like Spanish style rice, if you will. And she would also put fresh made tortillas, like every meal, pretty much, or every other meal was fresh tortillas, flour. She would make them flour by hand. And she sits you down and she lets you watch while she's making these tortillas. And you ask her the recipe, and she's like, well, I don't know. You just put a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And she'll start naming off ingredients. And I'm like, well, how much? And she would hold out her little hand and she'd be like, these much, okay? You see right there, these much. And that's how she taught. She said, that's how much it goes in. You just measure it with your hand. You don't need a spoon. You don't need, you know, cups or nothing. None of that. No measuring spoons, no measuring cups. Just use your hand, use your eyes, use your taste, use your smell, use your feel. And that's how she taught me how to cook. I would see her doing all of these things. To this day, I have a napkin that I was sitting down with her one time and we were talking just before she passed as well. And I said, hey, I've never written down your recipe for chicken mole. Can we go over it? I think I remember everything, but let's go ahead and go over it. So she goes, yeah. So on this napkin, I have the keys to the kingdom, I guess you could say. It's her original chicken mole recipe, and I went over it with her to discuss the technique and when she does things and why. And I thought about it as a chef, you know, versus the technique that I was used to using. She did it a little bit similar and a little bit different at the same time. She would combine techniques such as braising and roasting, you know. And so she would do all these things. She didn't go to culinary school, but she had been cooking for like 80 years. Can you imagine that? Cooking for 80 freaking years. I mean, you have to be a master chef at that point, right? And she was. She was amazing. Like if you were to see this woman cook, like I swear to God, she could do probably a whole dozen of tortillas by the time you're finished cooking one. And she had it down to a science. I mean, I can hear the tortilla roller going. It's just like click, clack, flip, click, clack, flip, click, clack, flip, click. And then that was a perfectly round tortilla. Then she'll take it in her hands, throw it side to side, left to right, left to right, and then throw it down on the fresh, hot, smoking comal. And while that was cooking that one side, she goes to the next one. Click, click, flip, click, click, flip, click, click, flip, click. Next tortilla. She has it, boom, boom, boom. She flips that first tortilla, drops the second one down. And then she goes to the next tortilla. Boom, boom, flip, boom, boom, flip, boom, boom, flip, boom. And then what? Then she takes off her first tortilla. That's done. She drops the second one and then, drops the third one, then flips over the second one and goes on to the fourth tortilla. And she did this like a freaking machine. And it took seconds, literally seconds, to cook her tortillas. And oh my God, it was amazing. And I thought that's how everybody cooked. I thought that's what cooking was. So between her and my grandfather, that instilled in me, well, you're supposed to cook this fast. You're supposed to be this just precise, you know? And that's how I thought cooking was. And when I started going into my first cooking job, which was at the Pizza Loca, I had that work ethic. And so when I first started, I was just balls to the wall, trying to go as fast as I could, but be precise as I could. And because that's what I thought, you're supposed to do. And so during the interview process, they offered me the job. They said, hey, when can you start? I was like, as soon as possible. So the guy's like, as soon as possible. What if it's today? What if it's right now? I said, yeah, that's cool. So he goes, all right. He reaches up, grabs a shirt, throws me a shirt, and says, get to work. Now, the shirt was like ugly as hell. It was like a yellow, like a bright canary yellow collar. And then it had like diagonal stripes. It had green, red, and yellow, canary yellow. And then on the cufflink pockets, the kind of things on the edges, it was blue. It had like dark navy blue. So it was like all colors of the rainbow. It was ugly as hell. But I was like, all right, cool. What do I got to do? And they're like, here, take care of all these dishes. So I'm out there busting my ass, washing all these dishes. And I'm doing this for like 2-3 hours. I'm 15 at the time. I told him I was 16 because you have to be 16 to work where I'm at. And so I already lied and told him I'm 16. My grandmother had dropped me off for the interview, and she went shopping, and then she's like, okay, I'm gonna come back for you later. And I'm like, all right, cool. And here it is, like 3 hours later, she's all worried. She comes in and she's like, hey, I'm looking for my grandson. He came in here. He said he was in a job interview. This was like 3 hours ago, and I haven't heard from him. Have you seen him? And they're like, oh yeah, I gave him the job. He's at work right now. And so I hear her like pop out. I'm all drenched and like just sweat, like excuse me, dishwashing liquid and just sweat and just drenched, right? And I'm like, hey grandma, and hey mom, And so she goes, okay, what time should I come back? And so she ended up leaving and then coming back later. And that was my first introduction to the food industry, is dishwashing. And that's good. Another good stop there. I'm gonna press pause and then I'll be back in a few. All right, so we're back, and I've decided that should be a good stopping point for today. Now, if you're interested in hearing about the Pizza Loca and all the stories that it entails, which is quite embarrassing, let me know. Go ahead and comment, like, and subscribe. If you want to talk shit, whatever helps you. Go ahead and do that. Let me know down in the comments if you'd like to hear about Pizza Loca and the stories of my first legit job and how I ended up there, why I chose to do it before I was of age, and we'll get into that. So this has been the first sesh of the podcast, and you guys have a good day.